Right then, we're going to talk about Chapter 6 of The Great Gatsby, and this one's all about, as you can see, I've titled it. We've got a little bit about Gatsby's past and the next party, basically, and the next party is a really dismal, horrible affair. It's not very pleasant, and Nick understands and can see that. Anyway, the first thing that we get is this other quotation. It's one of the rumours about Gatsby and Gatsby's life, and you've got it. It says, "He didn't live in a house at all, but in a boat that looked like a house, and was moved secretly up and down the Long Island shore." And the reason why I've included this is because this quotation is absolutely ridiculous. It's another rumour about Gatsby. Earlier on, they were more enigmatical. He was like this mysterious figure that nobody had met before, and now it's just becoming absurd. And so maybe Gatsby is becoming a figure of ridicule, rather than this enigmatical character. And so, yeah, I think actually the rumours are getting worse, and they're not really serving his purpose anymore. We also get the second quotation, which is all about how Gatsby in his earlier life used to wander up and down a beach, and it's interesting that he's wearing a torn green jersey here, and the colour green is kind of what I'm picking on, because in his youth, Gatsby is a really hopeful character, so he's wearing green because he wants to transcend his cultural boundaries. He wants to become more than he actually is currently. And so that green is symbolising the hope, just like the hope green represented with the light coming from Daisy's dock. And because this is like when Daisy and Gatsby had reunited, I would say that green is still relevant now, and it is still hopeful and is still working for him. You've also got this quotation a little bit later on which says he was a son of God. Well, if he was the son of God, then perhaps he's not the son of his parents, or perhaps he can actually become more than his parents were. Maybe he's not subject to that same rule that everybody else is, like the people in the Valley of Ashes, how they were born ashes and are never going to escape that. So maybe he can become more than his class, break this rule. However, at the same time, you've got to question, is Fitzgerald setting up a tragedy? Maybe Gatsby had a chance and he loses that chance because, well, in this case, he gets with Daisy, and Daisy's the person that brings him down. Moving on. We'll talk about Gatsby's imagination here, and it talks about his reveries and the idea that the promise of the rock of the world was founded securely on a fairy's wing is what I picked out here, because a fairy's wing sounds so delicate, so fragile, but at the same time also it's magical. And so perhaps in his reveries, in his imagination, there's something amazing about it, and maybe he can succeed. Maybe his life is founded securely on a fairy's wing and it can take off, it can fly. However, it is very fragile. The image is very fragile, and maybe something can interrupt that. It'll all come crumbling down, which sounds very, very likely. Obviously, is probably going to happen with his relationship with Daisy. We also learn in this chapter about Dan Cody. Dan Cody is Gatsby's benefactor. He's the person that actually teaches Gatsby to be an upper class person. He gives him that kind of experience, I suppose, of old money upper class etiquette and how they behave. In the film it says that's where he gets his old sport from. We don't know that in the actual novel, but it is a good indicator of who Dan Cody was and the influence he has over Gatsby. However, we also have somebody called Ella Kay. Ella Kay is one of Dan Cody's, his last wife, because obviously Dan Cody dies. And in this quotation, Ella Kay came on board one night in Boston, and a week later, Dan Cody inhospitably died. And it's Nick insinuating that Kay is probably responsible for the death of Cody. We don't know what she does, but the idea that he dies a week later is too much of a coincidence to ignore. And so I've linked this to the end as well, the very final line. So he beats on boats against the current, borne ceaselessly into the past. And I would say ceaselessly into the past. I think there is a bit of repetition here. I think actually Gatsby is reliving that same death that Dan Cody had here as well, because I think both of them are victims of women whose primary interest is wealth and security, beyond love, beyond anything else, that they actually want to look after their own interests and their own security, their own state, their own health. So I think just like Dan Cody is a victim of Ella Kay, I would say that Gatsby is a victim of Daisy. And so, born ceaselessly into the past, repeating the past. We get a little bit more of an indication of the party going a little bit further on, And Nick says, now I was looking at it again through Daisy's eyes. I think this links to the idea that Nick is writing a retrospective narrative, which basically tells us that he's looking back and he sees the whole situation through Daisy's eyes and realizes and understands what's going through her mind. So I think it's quite tragic. If he's thinking about Daisy and Daisy's position, he's maybe understanding how she cannot be with Gatsby and still maintain the same class. And so, while she wants to be in this romance, while she loves Gatsby, she realizes that the reality of it is not particularly good, that Gatsby cannot offer the same financial security that Tom can, because Tom is old money upper class and Gatsby is new money upper class. So later on when she says, if you want to kiss me at any time during the evening, Nick, just let me know and I'll be glad to arrange it for you. Present a green card, I'm giving out green. Well, green obviously has been used for hope, and it's been used for hope earlier on in this chapter as well, when Gatsby is wearing that torn green jersey earlier on. But now there's something tragic about it, because at the end of the previous chapter, we learn that the magic of the green light has faded for Gatsby, that actually it doesn't work for him anymore. And so the idea she's giving out green, well, he's not looking for green anymore because they've already reunited. And so that hope has kind of died. It doesn't really work anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, the idea that she uses green twice is kind of tragic. Unfortunately, it seems like it's not going to work out between the two of them. Moving on, we've got down this quotation, go ahead, answered Daisy genially. And if you want to take down any addresses, here's my little gold pencil. She looked around after a moment and told me the girl was common but pretty. This is Daisy talking to Tom. And now she's actually allowing Tom to cheat on her. She's actually encouraging it. She says, okay, here's a pencil, go take down a number. Whereas previously she's been really upset about his affairs and his infidelities. Actually, she becomes okay with it. And that's probably because she's engaging in an affair herself. She's probably seeing Gatsby behind Tom's back. So it's interesting that, I've got later, basically she says that the girl's common. Okay. And the idea that she points out that the girl is common, well, if she wasn't common, would she mind a little bit more? If she was actually an equal of Daisy, then would Daisy feel a little bit more awkward about the situation or self-conscious because this person would be an equal? But because it's common, because this girl is common, she doesn't really mind, or so it seems. So perhaps like she finds this confidence in her class, and if she finds assurance in class, it doesn't really bode well for Gatsby, because Gatsby is not the same class as her. He is new money upper class, she is old money upper class, and inherited wealth is much more valuable than gained wealth, basically, because inherited wealth tells you that you've come from a very good family and have the manners and etiquette and education of that family. You haven't had to learn it new. Moving on. We have a really nice bit of imagery that Fitzgerald uses. The blocks of the sidewalks really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. He could climb to it if he climbed alone. And the interesting thing is, alone. So when Gatsby gets together with Daisy, he's no longer alone, and that's actually going to be his downfall. That's actually not going to work out for him very well at all. So he can climb, and when he's walking along, actually, it's actually him, making more of himself. He's transcending his cultural boundaries. He's becoming more than his working class, shiftless farm people upbringing. And unfortunately, it's only alone that he can do it. Again, you've got this quotation here which says, once there he could suck on the pap of life and gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder. So alone he is able to enjoy things. And it links really nicely to this quotation later. I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh green breast of the New World. So you've got a fresh green breast here, and you've got the pap of life. Mean the same thing, they both mean breast. And it's as if nature or America can actually provide for them, but only if they're alone. Or in Gatsby's case, if he is alone. So as soon as he gets together with Daisy, that's it. Things don't work out. And so maybe this is the fragility of the fairy's wing that we talked about earlier. If he's with somebody else, yeah, this fairy's wing cannot sustain both of them. It cannot actually keep them both up. Later on then, we have this quotation here, he knew that when he kissed this girl and forever wed his unutterable visions to a perishable breath, his mind would never romp again like the mind of God. So he knows, he understands that actually he could never be as free when he actually gets together with Daisy, but he does it anyway. So he knew when he kissed this girl, and he does forever wed. It's permanent, whereas she's actually perishable. So he forever weds, she's perishable, and perishable just means that it's never going to last. It's going to fade and ruin. So we don't know why he does it, but he joins himself to Daisy, and unfortunately, again, Daisy is his downfall. When he marries something that is perishable, we know it's never going to succeed. Finally then, we've got a couple more quotations. I find it interesting that Fitzgerald uses the image of a tuning fork, which has got this like really nice connotations of a sound that dies out. So if you hit a tuning fork, it has a really strong sound, and it fades and fades and fades, which is called a diminuendo or a decrescendo. And so at the start it's really strong, but unfortunately it's just going to fade and fade and fade, just like Daisy and Gatsby's love. And finally you've got this quotation, "At his lips' touch she blossomed for him like a flower, and the incarnation was complete," which probably indicates that they do have a sexual relationship. The idea that she flowers for him or blossom for him like a flower, which is probably like the strength. This is like the striking of that tuning fork from earlier. This is what he marries himself to.